And we're here this week with Ronnie Atkins, the singer of Pretty Maids, and definitely one of my favorite vocalists of all time. And the first, a Metal Command first, I actually have Ronnie here to do an interview for the radio show. So with that, Ronnie, talk a little bit about what you currently have going on. What is Pretty Maids up to? And talk about the current happenings with the band.
Well, right now we're actually just about to hit the road again and do like the second leg of the Kingmaker, which was the last album we did. The second leg of that tour, which will actually start on Thursday, playing a gig in Helsinki in Finland, where we haven't played for a long time. And then we're going to do some gigs in some areas in Germany, and we're going to do France and some Eastern European countries. It's just a little 3-week tour, but that'll be last year we toured Europe with Gotthard, and there were certain areas we didn't go to, so this is like the final leg of a tour. And then again, it's not, because we're going to do some festivals during the summer and a couple of gigs around Christmas this year. But apart from that, we're going to go back and write songs for a new album that will probably see the light of day in 2019. And also, we're gonna do a DVD this year, I guess. Record some stuff on this upcoming tour. So there's plenty of things going on, and we've been touring with this album on and off over the last 2 years. So it's been enough to do.
Ronnie, there's always bands out there that stick around for a long time, and they don't really put out interesting material anymore. I mean, the material is really not all that great. But you guys are also in that category, in my opinion. You're in that category with like Saxon and some of these other bands where the older you get, the better the albums seem to get. And what attributes to that for you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, basically, we just try to do the best we can every time we go in to do an album, and I just think it's a combination of things, a combination of the two of us who were the main writers, like Kenny writes normally, he's a riff maker, and I'm basically a pop singer in a hard rock band, No, but I mean, I got all these melodies all the time, and I still have the capability of come up with a good melody, and thank God, well, maybe someday it ends, and I don't know what happened, but I think it was like in 2008-9, we got the fire back in the band. We got the spark back, and we wrote the album that became Pandemonium, where with songs like Little Drops of Heaven and stuff like that, and it became very successful with the critics and most importantly by the fans. And since that, we've been touring a lot and doing quite a few albums since 2010, and we've been on some kind of a roll. So I'm just it's privileged that people still want to listen to us, So we're having a good time with that. I can't say why. I mean, I think it's very important that you have that. That fire and that desire to do it. I think it's the main thing. Mm-hmm. If you don't have it, I don't think you can come up with a good album. But we've been so privileged that we're still able to do it, which is good.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm a big fan of all of your albums, but if I had to pick one I really didn't like, it's Wake Up to the Real World. I really thought that album lacked a lot, and I really didn't think it was all, and honestly, I didn't think it was all that great. So with that said, I think, something happened, because then after that, you put out Pandemonium, which I think was just a fantastic record. And, what happened between Wake Up to the Real World and Pandemonium? What happened between that album, and then, of course, the Pandemonium album when it came out? What changed in the band, and what changed in your mentality?
Well, to extend a short story long, no, what happened was that in 2002, we did an album called Planet Panic, right? And at the time being, I was pretty fed up with the whole thing. Basically, I felt we were doing the same thing all over and over again. Same album, same tour. And the scene changed quite a bit, and our management went bankrupt. So we basically lost a lot of money. So we took a long break. Then there was some illness within the band, and we didn't do much for quite a while. So between 2002 and 2008, basically nothing was going on, apart from the fact that we did this album called Wake Up to the Real World, which I totally agree with you. It's definitely not one of the best, not in my eyes either. But we did it, and then we did a tour in 2008, a little European tour, and realized that people hadn't forgot about us. And I think that's what kind of started the whole thing, in 2008 when we did that European tour. Then we started writing songs during 2009. We did a few festivals, and we were gathered, and we did. I think some of the first songs we did was a song called Cielo Drive, and it was written during rehearsals, and me and Kenny just kind of looked at each other and gave each other a nod, and said that, hey, we got something going here. That was the first time in many years that where I felt that here we got a really, really good song, and this could eventually turn into a really, really good album. And I think it did. It was just the right combination of people, new guys in the band and stuff like that at the time being. And I think that's why we could come up with an album like Pandemonium. And I had a new producer called Jacob Hansen, who we'd never worked with before. So who Michael Paulson from Volbeat actually was the one recommending it, And that started something. I mean, the combination of all these things, I guess.
Well, when I was mentioning before about bands that, when they get older, they start getting better, I think Pandemonium was that one album, because there's always one album a band puts out that just sets everything back into motion. And I think Pandemonium is what did that for you.
Yeah, but I mean, as I said, you just every time you go in and do an album, we want to come up with the best we can at the time being. I mean, I know now we've done we've done like 3 full studio albums that's been very successful, like Pandemonium, Motherland, and lately Kingmaker. And of course you put some kind of a pressure on you, but you just gotta go in with everything you got every time. That's it. I don't know what the next album is going to be like. I have no clue, really. I just hope we can come up with something good that the fans like, and that we like ourselves. I don't think we're going to release it unless we are 100% happy with it.
Right.
Well, I'm pretty sure we won't.
So talk a little bit about the DVD that you're looking to put out, and maybe talk about what you're looking to put on it.
Well, actually, we it was a suggestion from the record company, and we gave it a little thought ourselves. Because, last year we celebrated the 30th anniversary of Future World, the album we did back in '87, right? And somebody suggested that why don't we do like it's time for a live DVD again. We did one in 2000. Recorded in 11 and released it in 12. So there's been some requests for that, and we said, okay, let's do it, let's do it, then maybe record the whole Future World show, which we were meant to do in December last year, but for various reasons, partly illness and technical problems, it never materialized. So that is actually what we're going to do on the upcoming tour on one of the shows, which I can't say which one yet, but we're going to do that whole album, and there'll be some other stuff as well, because we toured with Future World throughout 1988 as well, right, with some gigs. So I still think it's legitimate, and we can still pull it off, and we can still play the songs, and the songs are very popular, especially in Germany, for instance, So, well, in Europe, Future World was a very big album back then, and that was very much the album that put us on the map back then, right? So that's the next step. That is the next step. That's what the album is going to be. The DVD is going to be about. Yeah.
All the bands that I interview from Europe, they all of them that grew up with you guys, they always cite that Red Hot and Heavy, Future World, and Jump the Gun are 3 of their most influential albums. And when I listen to your music and compare it to some of the other bands at the time, and even now, you have a little bit of an AOR touch to your music as well. Not just metal and hard rock, but there's that AOR melodic sense in a lot of your music that just, sets you apart from a lot of different people.
Yeah, but I mean, what can I say about these 3 albums? Well, talking about AOR, and at the same time as we grew up with bands basically we grew up with, I like all the 70s old bandmaster, so Sabbath, Zeppelin, Purple. But I like Kiss, we like Thin Lizzy, we like UFO. But also we grew up with the whole new wave of British heavy metal, right? But at the same time, we love bands like Journey, Foreigner, Toto, whatever, 38 Special, whatever came out from America, and we love that as well. And so we always been a combination of all these kind of different influences that we had, right? And talking about those 3 albums, like Red Hot and Heavy, Future World, and Jump the Gun, are very much the milestones for us, and they still are, because they came out at a time where that kind of music was the top of the pops, was the thing, right? Though I would say, if you ask me today personally, I think the last 3 albums we've done are better, But I mean, that was the time, that was the 80s. that was it. That's those 3 albums. Also, they were commercially the best selling albums we did. And Syndicate as well, the one that came after Jump the Gun. But that said, I think we've done a lot of good stuff up in the 90s. But, there was all these sub-genres, and then it was new metal, and it was this, and then it was that. I don't know. There were so many things going on. So it was like, we were like kind of kids, with what we did, I mean, it was totally pop music compared to what was released at the time being. So
right.
a lot of people probably don't know about the albums we did back then, but we did albums like Scream and Spooked, that I think not that I listened to them very often, but I just remember they were good albums. What we're talking about now actually that's another thing going on, is actually to re-release all the stuff from the 90s and the stuff that isn't accessible for people.
Right.
And put it on, maybe release it as vinyl, probably, and CDs as well, and as streaming. And actually, at the same time, I think Sony Music is going to release the old albums, Red Hot and Heavy, Future Roll and Jump the Gun, on vinyl within a year or two as well.
Right.
So there are things happening, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I thought Scream was a terrific record, and it came out at a time, when your kind of music just really wasn't, when our kind of music really wasn't that big. I mean, a lot of people really weren't big on it.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when we did Scream, we actually tried to update ourselves, but every time it always ended up sounding like Pretty Maids as well, right? I think we were a little inspired by some of the certain songs, by some of the grunge and the kind of thing that happened at the time in the beginning of the 90s, right? But it always ended up sounding like Pretty Maids. But I think, it's a good album. I think albums like Spooked and Anything Worth Doing are good albums too, But when they came out, people didn't pay much attention to them. Apart from Germany, Germany and Japan, which has always been our two, I gotta say, key markets. If it wasn't for those two countries, we probably wouldn't have been here today. So
it's funny you mentioned Anything Worth Doing is Worth Overdoing, because that album lyrically had a huge impact on me when it came out.
Well, I think when I'm writing lyrics, I try to write out of a normal human being's perspective, or whatever I get inspired by, what I watch on the news, what I see on television, or if I have some, it's very difficult. I mean, of course, there's a lot of love songs and stuff like that, but that's mainly fiction. But also, there's some personal stuff in between, And I always try to be sometimes I like to be a little political, not to make a stand, whether I'm left or right oriented or whatever, or in between, but just out from a human's perspective, something that should concern every human being, If you take a song like Mother of All Lives, which is from the Motherland album, I wrote at the time being as when there was an election going on in Denmark. I think that was inspired by that. Wow, but they always say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and they don't do shit, right? I guess it's the same all over the world, but I always I try to write about something that makes sense in real life, because I guess I'm past the Dungeons and Dragons period, like 83, 84, something like that, But also I like to write about if I get into something. I remember I was totally into this whole. For some reason, I was zapping on I was on the internet. I was just running around. Then I came to this site about Sharon Tate and Charles Manson. So the songs "Yellow Drive" from Pandemonium is all about that, because I know everything about that case. I read a lot about it. I tracked it down on the internet. I got obsessed with the whole case. It was just an example, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what that's all about. And then it goes on. Like on the last album, Kingmaker, I took when God took a day off, the opening track is about everything that goes on in the Middle East and all the horror and stuff like that, But I like writing about that. I'd rather write about something that makes sense that some friction, though some of the stuff is friction as well, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, you guys had a really killer version of the song Savage Heart in a Stripped album, and I think the Stripped album was still, in my opinion, probably one of the most underrated thing you guys did in the 90s, because, you guys, it just proves how you guys can take your music and make it different and, write different types of songs. And I thought the Stripped album was actually very, very good.
Well, thing is that the reason why we did an album called Offside, which was released in '92. That was a suggestion from the Japanese, because we had a song called "Please Don't Leave Me." That was a huge hit here in Scandinavia, especially in Denmark, and in Japan as well. So the Japanese record, Sony Japan, wanted us to do like an album with some songs in that kind of vein, the more commercial, radio-friendly stuff, which never was a problem for us to write. And we had a lot of stuff there. So we released that. We did like 4 or 5 songs in the summer of '92, and it was a crazy time in Denmark, because at the time being, the Danish national soccer team won the European Championship. We're all soccer crazy, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why the album turned out to be called Offside. Well, anyway, that's nothing to do with it. But the thing is that little 5-track mini EP became pretty successful and sold very well in Japan. So at the time being, we wanted to get out of the deal with Sony Music. And we made a deal with them. We cut a deal with them that said, if you get another 5 acoustic kind of tracks, can we say that we're out of the deal? They would take it as a whole album. So we took those 5 songs, added them to the Offside album, Offside mini EP, and that eventually turned into Being Stripped.
Gotcha.
That's why, and that album is actually the best-selling album we ever had in Denmark. But I think it ruined more than it did us good, because a lot of people around the world were totally, what is this? What are those guys doing? Are they totally out of their mind? And with a dog on the front, on the cover, But that was just a joke, That's why the album's called Stripped, I think it confused a lot of people. It was basically an album done to get out of the contract, but also an album done because we liked the songs that were there, But people just got it totally wrong, and couldn't see the funny thing in it, So it cost us. We dropped down in sales a lot of places, like in Japan and Germany, because of that album, But that said, I'd actually like to do a part 2 one day. But Savage Heart was just basically a stripped version of the original Savage Heart, which is on Jump the Gun, right? Which is very, very, very much produced, maybe kind of overproduced, if you ask me. So this is the Savage Heart version on Stripped. It's it's the stripped down version of Savage Heart, right? And that's actually the version we've been playing the mostly live.
Now, Europe in the 80s, obviously, with there are a lot of metal bands coming out of Germany, and Denmark was obviously had a few bands themselves, but so your perspective coming up through the scene there in Denmark, talk a bit about what was it like for you to come through the metal scene, and when you were first starting out, when all this started to happen.
But it was really, really tough, there was, when we started out back in '81, there was no bands. There was King Diamond in Copenhagen, and a band called Merciful Fate back then, right? And there was a band called Witch Cross, but there wasn't really many bands. And later on, bands like Artillery came along. There was another Danish guy called Lars Ulrich. You've probably heard about him. To LA, right? But Metallica came to, he used to hang out with those guys back in the day. We met them a couple of times in Copenhagen, and they used to do the first albums there, and they actually lived at our back then manager's apartment, because they had no money back then and stuff like that, But the thing is that in the early 80s there wasn't really any scene. Then in the mid 80s there was like a kind of an underground scene here in Denmark, and but I hardly can remember the name of the bands. But I think all Danish bands went outside. You sent their demo tapes to Germany or to Holland or Netherlands or to Britain or something like that. And the first record deal we had was actually with a company in England, and that was a very, 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 very bad deal, And then we just continued to sign bad deals over and over again. But we signed with this little independent company in England, and we literally didn't know anything. We were like 17, 18 years old, We didn't have any consultants or any advisors or anything like that, So, but here we are, so many years on, right? And we're still alive. Ain't life grand?
For you to play in some of these cruise ships, what's that like for you to be on this cruise ship and have the whole cruise ship experience for a few days while playing to a lot of different fans, especially over here in the U.S.?
Oh, well, that's cool. That's fun. The last one we just came back from one actually. from Miami to Bahamas, right? But we were a little hit by disease on that trip, so that wasn't that funny. But it's good. I mean, listen, when we're doing these cruises, and I think we've done 4 or 5 of them during the last couple of years, that's the only chance we've actually had to play in front. I mean, we're not playing on American soil, but we play for American people, for Canadians. And, there's so many American people and so many Canadians that write us on our homepages and on the internet. We had letters from there during the years. Why don't you come to the U.S. and play? Why don't you do an American tour and stuff like that? And listen, there's not anything we'd rather do. And it doesn't just go for America and Canada, but for Australia as well. Every territory that we haven't been to. But, it takes South America, but it takes some promoters that believes in it, that could be a package or something like that. But I just want to tell the fans that it's really not because we don't want to do it. We would love to do it. We'd love to play everywhere if it's possible. But we do not go out and take a bank loan to make it happen. It's got to be reasonable, But I mean, hey, back to the cruises. I mean, nice weather, especially this time of year in Denmark. It sucks, So going out there is normally in February. That's cool. That's great, and there's always a fantastic vibe. And this time as well, there's great fans. You walk around the fans and stuff like that. You have a chance to take some photos or pictures. You talk to people. It's really cool. People are very nice, and yeah, I only have good things to say about it. Yeah.
Well, you did the whole Avantasia thing, and we're touring with that and recording on that last album. What was it like for you to go on stage with so many other accomplished singers and so many other people and great musicians on stage and play with them every night?
It's cool. I mean, it's good. The whole Avantasia experience, I mean, it's like one big family. We're like 32 people on the road, and everybody respects each other, and we're basically just having a real good time. I mean, I can't pinpoint out one person in the whole touring entourage that I don't like. I mean, it is very rare, actually, because there's a fantastic vibe in that project. And when the first time I did it in 2013, when he did the Mystery of Time album, he asked me to participate in the tour. I couldn't do the South American part, but I could do the European tour, and I was a little reluctant to say yes. But I said yes, and I did it, and I never regretted it. And 2 years ago, we did the Ghost Lights tour, which was a fantastic trip around the world. And also here, for the first time, I had the chance to play on American soil. Unfortunately, not with Pretty Maids, but we played in L.A., New York, and in Toronto, and that was great. Great experience.
Awesome.
I got to say, we played in Atlanta once with Pretty Maids, but that was on the Prog Pal Festival, but that was like 6 years ago or something. And that was cool too, I hope we'll be back there. I hope we'll be back in America to play there at some point.
Yep. Gotcha.
And as far as Avantasia goes, I don't know. I mean, there's probably coming a couple of new album out at some point, but I have no clue when or where or whether I'm going to be a part of it. And it's quite a puzzle for Toby, really, because, I mean, he's got all these different singers, we've got these different bands, most of them I know the band, right? So, I mean, just to combine it, I mean, that's quite a job, because every individual band has their own schedules and stuff, so it's kind of... But let's see. I wouldn't mind doing it again. It was fun. It was a great fun. And as I said, there was like this mutual respect between each other, for what we've done. And we're so diverse as singers. We're so different. We have different ways of styles of singing. We have different ways of approaching an audience. I mean, there's a big difference between the way I sing and the way Kiske sings. And we had Jorn, who was an awesome singer as well. We had Eric Martin, who was my drinking pal. And we just had a lot of good fun. So many... I mean, Eric Martin is more like the kind of bluesy type of like Paul Rodgers kind of singer. Actually, in reality, I mean, I think it was a great, and it's a good job by Toby to collect these people and make it happen. All these different singers. And it worked. It worked. I think people really liked it. So. That was cool.
You mentioned the Prog Power Festival you played a few years ago, and when you came over here for the first time, were you kind of wondering how the reception would be to you? Were you kind of wondering, hey, how is the crowd going to react to us? Are people going to know us? And what were your thoughts on coming over and playing in the U.S. for the first time?
Yeah, well, I remember we talked about it when we got it. I mean, nobody was scared or anything about doing it. We were just curious to see how the crowd reaction would be, But that turned out, as far as I remember, turned out to be really, really good. I just remember we did the gig and flew home. We said, why the hell are we not doing some more gigs in America? And as I said before, we would love to do that, but it takes somebody that believes in the band. Probably some kind of a package. It would be great to do some kind of a package, which a lot of other bands do. So we would be eager to do that, absolutely, if the money's right. If it's possible to do it financially,
Right.
That's very important to state that for me, so that fans don't think that it's because we don't want to go there and play, because we would love to, really. Both, talking about America, South America, Australia, whatsoever,
It always baffled me why this band never really became big or caught on in the U.S., because when I compare it to other bands, it never really made sense to me. The songwriting you guys had and still have is on par with anybody else. And what do you think is the reason behind this?
But I think it's basically because I can tell you why it is. We've done a lot of mistakes in our career. We signed we didn't have the right advisors back in the 80s, We were, other Q Prime were interested us back then in 87, right? And we should have moved to America. We had the chance to do it, but we all refused to do it because for family reasons and stuff like that. And in 87, we had the chance to go out with Whitesnake, I remember, for 3 weeks, but we couldn't do it because we were already committed to do the Deep Purple European tour and these Monsters of Rock festivals, So there's a lot of coincidence. There's a lot of reasons, really. We were signed to a Danish company. If we had the Danish division of Sony Music, it was called CBS Records back then, right? But if we were signed to New York or to London, it would have been a totally different story. And if we had the right management, which we didn't. That's my explanation, because I think the material was there, and I've heard this. You're not the first one to tell me this, right? So that's something that I deeply regret sometimes. I got to say that. But that said, hey, we're still here, we're still alive, and we're still able to make some good albums, So I don't really complain in that way. Yeah, but looking in the rearview mirror, yeah. We've done a lot of mistakes, and that's probably one of the reasons why we never made it in America.
Well, I have to admit, you worked with Roger Glover on a Jump the Gun album, and that had to be a pretty cool experience. Talk about what was like working with Roger back then and working on that album.
Oh, it was huge. Listen, he's probably the funniest guy I ever worked with. What a great guy, what a gentleman, basically. And he was so cool. We went over to his place upstate in Greenwich, in Connecticut, where we did pre-production for 2 weeks in his house. He's just a great, fantastic guy, We actually basically still in contact sometimes around Christmas, he writes us and stuff, Just a great guy. It was a great experience. We actually met him before because we opened up for Rainbow back in 83. When Joe Lynn Turner was in the band, and we toured with Deep Purple in 87, a long tour. We played football with Richie Blackmore, and we hung out with the guys, and that has always been something with Deep Purple and this band, because we were huge Deep Purple fans, right? So I remember the first time we opened up for Black Sabbath in 83, that was with Ian Gillan in the band. And that's our first encounter with the whole Purple family, And he was such a good guy, He was such a cool guy, He got us on the BBC Friday Night Rock Show in England. We never asked him, but he just did it because he liked the band or whatever, So and we ended up actually having Bruce Payne, Deep Purple's manager, as our co-management in America at a certain point. So it's a long story. Really, but working with Roger was great. Actually, he wanted to do the album more kind of live. I remember driving around up in White Plains and up to Woodstock in New York, where we did the Future World album, actually, looking for a barn or somewhere where we could record it on a mobile, with a mobile truck or something like that. But we, at the time being, we wanted this album to be, I'm going to make like some kind of Hysteria, Def Leppard, which he didn't really want it to do in the first place. But it all ended up pretty good, So it was a little forth and back from America to Denmark and back to America to mix it. Well, we scrapped it, went back to Denmark and remixed some of it, It was a very expensive process, let me put it that way. A very expensive album, But he was a great guy working with, and still to this day, when it's not so many years I've met him when he played with Purple here, he's still a lovely bloke, So.
Well, Ronnie, as I always ask everybody on my show, do you have any last words for the final question? Any last words for any of the fans that are going to be checking out this interview?
Yeah, I hope I can say that from my heart. I hope that one day Pretty Maids will be able to go to America and play. And Ohio as well. I would love to go down and say hello, Cleveland. It's. I mean, we grew up with Spinal Tap, right? I would love to come to America and play, and I hope we will have a chance one day before. We go down the coffin. I mean, we're approaching that now. Seriously, I would love to. I mean, I would love to. Everybody in the band.
Gotcha.
So I hope we'll be able to do that one day. Hopefully.